Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scouts. I am joined by Gianni. How are you, Gianni?
I'm very well, mate. It's countdown time now, isn't it? It's happening. Friday, I'm just absolutely buzzing for. And every day this week, we're just going to be obsessed with FPL every minute of every day, aren't we? Checking our
And
teams,
we
checking
are,
news. It's great.
yep. And you've been tinkering, I hear.
I've been tinkering a lot this weekend, mate. I mean, I was one that was I wasn't set on the idea of Robertson, but he was in my original draft and part of my thinking. So that's changed. Greenwood and Jota's form and sort of guaranteed starts in game week 1, 2. That's changed. Man City sort of being a bit underwhelming. That's made me question Mahrez. All over the place, mate. As expected, I made a fair few changes.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I was saying just before we came on, I haven't made any changes in a couple of days. Feeling pretty settled. And I just know Friday, going to Fest, I'm going to have a few beers and I'm going to change everything up. You just know it. Get talked into someone I don't really want, and that always seems to be the way. Anyway, we're not talking about that date, so it's not a team reveal this time. Today, we're looking at Romelu Lukaku, and I wanted to do a video on him because obviously his signing to Chelsea is imminent and there's lots of talk about him. I did a tweet yesterday which got a fair bit of interest where I said, I didn't doubt Lukaku's quality, but I said the fee for him is astronomical and I don't see him really as that kind of world-class striker. Had some really good debates with people. You got involved. So what I thought I'd do was bring on the most biased person that I could possibly bring on the stream, which is you, to sell Lukaku to me and tell me why you think he is a must in my team. So you've been doing a bit of research. I've got a couple of screens. I'll just bring up his career stats just before we start. So he played 252 games in the Premier League, got 113 goals, which puts him right up there with some of the best players, just above the likes of Emmanuel Adebayor, I believe. But, I'm just being a bit facetious here. He's in some very illustrious company. 42 assists, 20 yellow cards. He's never been sent off in his career, which is good. Serie A, though, 72 appearances, 47 goals, 12 assists. Unbelievable. 20 goals in the Europa League in 33 appearances, 13 goals in 27 Champions League appearances, 13 goals in 19 FA Cup games. He just gets goals, doesn't he?
He does, mate. And I can't tell you how much he has improved in the last couple of years. And I'm fed up of seeing Premier League football fans saying, oh, Lukaku's coming back, expect the heavy touch. He's not world class. It's been... he wasn't great at United. I don't care. This guy has massively improved at Inter Milan. If he wasn't already a world-class or elite striker, my God, he is there now. Seriously, I'm really passionate about not only bigging up Serie A, as you know I do, and Italy, of course, but when some of their players in that league are disrespected, like Lukaku, I feel like I have to come on and talk about them because he is just an absolute worldie, and I'm so excited about him coming back to the Premier League.
So I think I think the people you're describing are me, essentially, because that is kind of how I see Lukaku. I see Lukaku as obviously a big, strong, powerful, quick forward who is intelligent, gets into good positions, scores goals, great finish on him, but has that slightly heavy touch. And I just wonder, for such a target man, how good his link-up play actually is at bringing other players into the game. I find that his form, he can go missing. I'm talking Premier League here. I haven't seen him too much in Serie A, and I was very impressed with him in the Euros. But in terms of bringing players into the game, in terms of always hitting the kind of, like, you watch Kane or you watch other players, and even when they're not having the best game, they kind of seem to do something or make something happen or just have a few flashes of brilliance, which makes you think, oh wow, this is someone right up there. With Lukaku, I found that he goes missing in quite a few games. But I'm guessing with 47 goals in 72 Serie A matches, he didn't go missing very often.
Yeah, he really didn't. And I know where you've got that from, Az. And I must admit, I watched him at United at times and I was disappointed with him. It wasn't the right system. It wasn't the right manager. It wasn't the right teammates. It just, some players are not made for certain clubs, right? we saw him at West Brom and Everton, and he looked like an absolute worldie. We've seen him at Inter and at Belgium, and he looks the same. There is one club that bucks that trend, but unfortunately, that's the club that everyone will remember because it's the biggest club in the world, and we love, us non-United fans, love to go to town on one of their players when they don't turn up. So the whole heavy touch thing only came into play when he was a United player. That wasn't a thing when he was at Everton or West Brom. It's certainly never been a thing when he's in Italy or played for Belgium, because it's not actually a thing. It's just what we jump on. So it's a bit like saying Raheem Sterling doesn't hit a ball clean when he strikes a football. Of course he does. He's a world-class player. But it's something we pick up on, and then it's just that whole sort of knock-on Twitter effect. So, yeah, he's massively improved at Inter, and it's the right fit for him. He plays in a very different system, which ironically is the same system Chelsea play or will play. Certainly the back three, Chelsea play 3-4-3 into 3-5-2, very similar. But at United, they had more sort of traditional wingers. He didn't have a strike partner. They had wide forwards either side. What we've seen with Lukaku at Inter is his game is so much suited to playing with a second striker. And that's the big thing. Conte played big man, little man. He had Lukaku with Lautaro Martinez, who does a lot of the dog work, the number 10, feeds Lukaku a lot. Or even Alexis Sanchez was at Inter, often on the bench, but came in and would do that role. And that's the idea of what we'll see him at Chelsea. He'll be partnered with someone like Werner that also benefits from playing with a two, off a big man. That's what he had at Leipzig. So I think it's a match made in heaven, really, a two of them. And even Havertz, if Werner's not on, can do that job as well. I just think it's a really nice combination. But the big improvement that we've seen off Lukaku in Italy comes down to the system, the fitness, the system, and the improved football intelligence. Under Conte, he's had a manager that's really sort of concentrated on tactics and brought the best out of Lukaku. And I don't think we saw that at United with a change in managers. And the other thing to bring out of the United time is, Mourinho said it himself, Lukaku needs to be the big fish not necessarily a small pond, but the big fish in the team, right? And at United, I don't feel like he was ever that. There were other players in the club that would probably had a little bit more respect or thought of more fans' favourites like Rashford in the team. At Inter, at Everton, at West Brom, he was always the big fish. And I think, again, at Chelsea, he will be.
Yeah, I mean, when you sign for a club for 97 million or whatever it is, and you're taking the spot of, everyone knows Chelsea need a striker, right? Everyone knows that is the one position that they're really lacking, I think, to really challenge for everything again next season. Okay, they won the Champions League without a real striker last season, but you've got to think that is a hole that they really needed to fill. I mean, I guess with United, it was interesting because, I mean, I think, like you say, the system. I don't think the systems they had were designed to get the best out of him. I think Mourinho's got a good history with players like Lukaku, these big, strong forwards. I mean, look at what he did with Drogba and players like that. Ibrahimovic, he seemed to get the most out of, but couldn't really. I mean, Lukaku still had a decent, scoring record at United, but often he dropped deep, and I don't. He hasn't got that Kane ability to drop deep and make passes and thread balls. I think, like you say, he's much more effective when he's just left up top, and you've got more creative players around him who are willing to do the work around him. And I think he's got that with the likes of Pulisic, with Werner. Havertz is going to drop back more, I think. And Ziyech as well, sort of creating chances. I mean, there's so much creativity now in that side that we should see, them getting more out of him. There's a really annoying fly buzzing around my room, which you can't see because you can't see me, but if people on YouTube might be able to, but it's driving me insane. So it's really interesting. And I've got some more stats here. So his last season for United, he was 8.5. Can tell you, he won't be 8.5 when he joins Chelsea. He had 22 starts, 32 appearances. So came off the bench 10 times. He got 12 goals in 22. Considering, people said he had a rubbish kind of last season, it's not a bad record. It's about in keeping with his record, around 50%. I think his goal record is. No assists, so it's all down to goals with him really. And then obviously he went to the Euros, and at the Euros he was in the team of the tournament. He was the striker picked to be team of the tournament. He was 1 goal off the Golden Boot, 2 man of the match performances. Belgium under-delivered, but again, it's Lukaku coming from a really, really positive season at Inter and doing well again in the Euros. So the form he's in, he should hit the ground running, right?
Yeah, he really should. Like, he's in his peak, as most strikers are at 28, right? We look at the 28 and think, yeah, that's when strikers usually are in their sort of best years. And, we've seen him in team of the tournament for Belgium, and we've seen him do all sorts in Serie A. His record there is so good. Like, we looked at the goals, 47 goals and 12 assists in 72 games in Serie A. Like, considering that's known to be a league with very good defenses, that's 2 seasons where he's cleared 20 goals a season with comfort. That's a goal involvement in 82% of his games, like, on average. So that's pretty good. Like, that's as good going as it gets. He's in his absolute form of his life, and he's fit. Like, I think another criticism of him at United was he was slightly overweight at times. He looks, a little bit more athletic now. He looks like he's gained a yard of pace because he
slowed
fitter.
down, didn't he? That's what I thought. Compared to Everton, he was still quite fast when he got going, but I just felt he'd lost that little bit of speed and sharpness.
I always felt like at Everton, he could score those goals out of nowhere where he kind of runs it from kind of 40 yards out. And once a season, we'd see one of those goals. I never felt like at United we were ever going to get that sort of goal.
No.
And by the way, at Inter Milan, we got that goal a lot. We got that goal against AC Milan in the derby last season from the halfway line. It was incredible. We took like 4 or 5 players on, and we're talking good defenders here. And again, like, he is a bit of a flat track bully. You look at the goals he scored in Italy, and admittedly, a lot of them come against sort of bottom half teams. But you expect that in most strikers, right? Most of their goals do come against weaker oppositions.
And also, they're the best. They're the best ones because they're the predictable for FPL wise. They're the most predictable strikers, of course. Yeah, you don't want strikers who score against the best sides and don't score against the worst sides. That would be way too difficult to predict for your captain.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. So it massively helps there. I think he'll come in at a good price. No, we've not touched on price yet. And I do think he'll be on pens. So the 2 big questions, I guess, to discuss are price and pens, which I'm guessing you'll get into as.
I'm indeed. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about price. So if you're watching this, sort of later in the week, he's probably already been priced, and Gianni and I are talking complete nonsense, which we normally do anyway. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yeah, what's your price? What's your price prediction? I think I know what I would say he's going to come in. I don't think you're probably too far off what I'm going to say. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I remember we spoke about it a week ago, didn't we? I remember saying my first impression was 10.5, and then I thought maybe he comes in as high as 11. I really don't think it's any more than 11. But again, I don't see it being lower than 10.5. So I'd be surprised if it wasn't 10.5 or 11. We don't see players coming from other leagues. We don't see them coming into the Premier League ever at more than that. I can't remember an example of ever a player coming into the Premier League. I know he's been there before, but he's been away for 2 years. I can't think of one ever coming in at more than 11 million. So,
has there ever been a signing like this, though, which has been like an established Premier League player leaving the club for big money and then coming back again for the same money? Like, he's now had what, 3 80+ million moves in his last 3 transfer windows. It's pretty impressive. I can't see any way he comes in less than 11. I think 11 is probably around the right price for him. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him at 11.5, but I have got a bit of a history of over predicting what players are going to come in. So I'm going to say 11 for him. I guess the next question is is he essential? Like, that's the name of this show. Like, how essential is he? How many goals do you reckon he'll get? And is he going to be in your team from the off?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 2 seasons in Serie A, clearly over 20 goals in Serie A. I think he gets 20 goals in a Premier League for Chelsea.
Goals. Yeah.
And so then you look at how many strikers in the league can get you that, and very few are guaranteed to get 20 goals. You think of Kane and Salah to get there, and obviously Salah listed as a midfielder. So if you look at the striker bracket in terms of guarantees, Kane's probably the only one. I don't think you bank on Vardy, certainly not Aubameyang anymore. Saying that, most of our squads have been built very happily with our 10 to 15 goal a year strikers at 7.5 million. So it's just about evaluating, do you pay the extra for that bank? If you're bringing Lukaku in, you need a make weight somewhere. And I feel that most that do bring Lukaku or Kane in, it will probably become Bruno that's that make weight, because I don't think anyone ships Salah. So then the question is, do you want Bruno or Lukaku? And I still feel like at the moment you want Bruno because the fixtures are there. We know he's guaranteed to start. Thomas Tuchel isn't going to chuck him. Whilst we need a striker in this squad, we're still the European champions. Like, Chelsea can play good football without Lukaku. Tuchel knows that and trusts that. So don't be surprised if he joins this week, if he doesn't even feature in game week 1, and by game week 2 he's coming off the bench for half an hour, and then maybe game week 3 or 4 he's starting. You know,
that's exactly what I think. Because I mean, Tuchel is a system manager, right? He's a very clear about where he wants his players to play, what the system's going to be. Lukaku isn't going to sign in, maybe today or tomorrow, have 3 or 4 days of training and start and play 90 minutes. There's just no way. I completely agree with you. And Chelsea's fixtures, this is the best one. It's not like they've got a Norwich at home in game week 2 or 3 or 4. This is the game you want him for. So my answer to the question is, how essential is Romelu Lukaku? Is he could well be, but I'm giving it 5-6 weeks, I think, before I'm going to have a plan for him. And I think you've got a plan for him if you've got the 2 premiums with Fernandes and Salah. And I think if you've got Son as well, I think you've got a potentially easy way to upgrade after Spurs' good run of fixtures. So I think you need to have a plan in mind for him. But yeah, it's definitely a way, given the fixtures. If the fixtures were different, if the fixtures were a sea of green, I would be thinking, he would, I need to make sure I've got that money in the bank. But for now, I'm going to be holding off. You?
Yeah, I think the same. I'm very likely to go with Danny Ings at 8.0 for the first 3 game weeks. 8.0, not 8.0, yeah. And I just think that I looked at the Ings price point and I'm like, it's a little bit too much than I want to spend. But then I was like, I want it for the first 3 games. And he will be the one that I upgrade to Kane or Lukaku. So knowing he's 8 million, it's money within that pot that I need to get to the 11 or 12 million to buy a Kane or Lukaku. So with that said, I think that will be my plan. It will mean downgrading one of my midfielders, but it might mean I don't need to touch a Bruno or a Salah because I only need 3 million, right? So to get that, it could be that I'm downgrading a Jota to a 4.5, for example. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I think that'll be my plan. And again, the Danny Ings fixture swing, we want him for the first 3 games, don't we? We don't want him beyond that. So, or I certainly don't with those fixtures. So I think that will be around the time I want to jump on a Lukaku or a Kane, right? So it's quite nice timing if you own Danny Ings, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, the Chelsea fixtures, they turn to a new level. I mean, the first 6 are Palace at home, amazing fixture. Then Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, Spurs, City. I don't think it gets any tougher than that for any team. Maybe Norwich have got a tougher run, but that is a difficult run for Chelsea. Game week 7, Southampton at home, Brentford away, Norwich at home, Newcastle away, Burnley at home. I mean, he's going to be in every team.
Yeah, his ownership's going to be scary by then. Yeah.
But the key thing with that is by then we might have a fully fit De Bruyne, we might have Harry Kane at City, we might have Fernandes firing, we might have Salah firing, we might have Son as lone striker firing.
Yeah. Sancho by then.
Sancho could be in. Mahrez could be in the team and playing well. I can't remember. At the moment, it feels like we've got a very, very narrow pool of players to choose. And that's why we're seeing all these Twitter templates the same. All teams are kind of looking the same. I tell you, it is good. After the international break in game week 3, I think we're going to see a lot of diversity as people try and jump on different bandwagons. And I guess that leads me to the question, if Kane does move to City, how do you stack him up against Lukaku at Chelsea?
Do you know what? I actually still prefer Kane at City than Lukaku at Chelsea, just because it covers the most attacking team in the league with the guy that we know will start every game. And it's just the easiest way to ever get to a Man City attacker would be Kane. I don't feel like Lukaku... I feel like he would be the best Chelsea option, but I think there will become good other Chelsea options that start every game. Your Mason Mounts, your Havertz, your whoever, your Reece James if he's playing right wing back, where you go, I can still get some Chelsea attacking cover and not spend much money that will play every game. You can't do that in Man City. When you spend 7 million on a Man City player, he's in the team 5 out of 10 weeks. So so it's a way of potentially covering both by going mid-price Chelsea, top tier City. Saying that, I do think Lukaku could become better value than, say, a Bruno. So maybe it's going, does this completely change to going, I'm having 3 premiums, but 2 of them are actually up front and it's complemented with Salah. And it means I can't have many mid-price players because I've got 3 guys at 11 million plus.
Well, I don't think it's completely unfeasible to think that Salah could end up being a sacrifice. Because I'm thinking about City and Chelsea and thinking... I think they're going to be competing for the title this year, given what they've got. I think United are going to be up there. They're switching to a 4-3-3. I think we're going to see Sancho, Fernandes, Greenwood come into the picture. We're going to have options there. And Liverpool have lost Wijnaldum, haven't signed anyone of note, just lost Robertson for a few weeks.
Yeah.
If they could end up starting off the season quite poorly, and suddenly it's Salah, the most expensive player in the game, with all these other options, I'm not saying he will be, but he could be the one which people turn away from. And that will really kind of kick the game open, because if he starts the season poorly and he's sort of 50% owned, and you switch him you go double up with Lukaku and Kane and Fernandes, could be really interesting.
Yeah, they'll definitely. You're right. As like those, I could see a lot selling Salah purely if he doesn't perform. Not only because there's other good options, but so many managers will be stung if he does blank because they would have given him the armband. Everyone's captain Salah, so there'll be loads of those rage transfers out because not only did he blank, but he blanked as your captain, right? So if Salah does blank, people rage him out, and that happens. And Salah actually is so dangerous in this game when his ownership's low, because he out of nowhere he can go on those runs. And I remember there was a time, it was a season before last, everyone was on Mane, and Mane was doing well, and everyone had sort of jumped ship. And I remember I missed out on all those Mane points. I was gutted, but I stayed with Salah, and eventually everyone came back to Salah fairly late. And I'd gained loads of Salah points. So he's definitely one that I really like in this game when his ownership's lower. He's one that I just always tend to own.
The problem we're going to have is the fixtures are so good for Liverpool right up to Game Week 7. But this is the thing. When Game Week 7's out of the way, this is when the fixtures start to toughen up a bit. But that's when the Lukaku fixtures turn so nice. So it could be a case of, late riser in his... his upside chasing stuff. This could be the perfect example of trying to target those fixtures by moving to Lukaku around Game Week 7. So another question for you. So, firstly, have you got any Chelsea players in your current draft? Have you got any Havertz or Chilwell or anyone else that you're considering?
Yeah, so I don't. And it is purely on the fixtures as. And I think there's really good value in that Chelsea team. I think Reece James could be a good pick this year. He's pretty cheap. Chilwell's a little bit more expensive at 6, so I prefer Reece James. And then I think Havertz could have a breakthrough year. And I think a lot of people share my opinion with this.
This is my question for you. So how do you think Lukaku impacts on the rest of the Chelsea team? Because Havertz is being tipped for a big season. I'm unconvinced that he's going to hit 200 plus FPL points. I think he could well be team of the year.
Yeah.
But doesn't become a real factor in our FPL season. That's my kind of bold prediction, and there's a lot of people disagreeing with it. But I think people who are saying that he's going to have this big FPL season are saying it off the back of him playing in that false 9 position, which obviously he's not going to do now. So how does Lukaku impact on Havertz?
Do you know what? I'm really shocked at the amount that assume was always going to play 9 this year. Havertz barely played false 9 last season. At the end of the season, he played a handful of games as false 9 in the same starting 11 as Werner. They were both in the 11. And because Havertz was often put in the false 9 position on the graphic before the match by Sky or BT or whoever.
We do trust those a lot, don't we?
Yeah, and Werner was put behind him with Mount quite often. As soon as you tune into those Champions League games, for example, quarter-final against Atletico, or I can't even remember who we beat in the semi-final. God, seems like forever ago because I've watched so much Euros football. But Real Madrid in both legs. When you watch those games, even the final, I think Werner was the number 9. Like Havertz is in the 11, and yes, we saw him score the goal against Man City from the number 9 position. But he was playing behind Werner, right? They were often flip-flopping, and there wasn't an out-and-out 9 between them. Both were running the lines. Lukaku coming into this Chelsea 11 benefits Havertz. It benefits Havertz completely, I think. I think we will still see Havertz playing behind. The interesting one is, where does Mason Mount play? Because we know that he'll be in that 11, but will it create a slight tweak in formation or structure? Because the perfect 2 to play off Lukaku are Havertz and Werner. And we've seen Mason Mount, a brilliant player that Tuchel loves for his football intelligence and his box-to-box running, but his ideal position is slightly further back. He's always said he likes playing in a 3-man midfield in a 4-3-3. Now, Chelsea don't play that formation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I do think Havertz will get a lot of minutes, and he looked razor sharp at the Euros as for Germany, didn't he? Again, at the Euros, he wasn't the false 9. It was often Thomas Müller there, but then he would take up those 9 positions on the football pitch, but he wasn't actually stationed there. So similar position for Chelsea, and he'll benefit with Lukaku, I genuinely think.
Yeah, Mount's really interesting. Mount was the opposite. I was very, very unimpressed with him
Me
at the
too.
Euros.
Yeah.
It's a real shame. I think, and now Pep's lining Grealish up to play the 8 for City makes you think, well, why the hell didn't we do that with Grealish at the Euros, And obviously we got to the final and it's hard to criticise too much. But Mount was one of our kind of our worst players, I think, during the whole tournament. But
and he's not a number 10. Like, he's not, he would be first to say, I'm not the most creative player in the world and I'm not a goal scorer. He's a box-to-box. He's Frank Lampard, right? You wouldn't put Frank Lampard there. He wants to play where Frank Lampard played. 3-man midfield, number 8 box-to-box. And unfortunately for the guy, because he's so versatile, he often gets put in positions he doesn't play. And actually, he won the Champions League doing it, and he got to the final of the Euros doing it in 2 positions which he didn't really want to play. Shame. Really.
Yeah. I really rate him, and I think people forget how creative he is. I mean, looking at the chances created list, I was doing a fan team video, and he was like 3rd or 4th on the amount of chances he created in the league last season, behind like Bruno Fernandes and Kane, I think, and then it's Mason Mount. And you've got to think, he didn't get that many assists last season, and mostly because he had Werner trying to convert the chances. But with Lukaku there, I think this could be a big year for Mount. I think if he can get the position that he wants, and he's got Lukaku to convert his chances, it's actually Mount that excites me more than Havertz from an FPL perspective.
Is it? Yeah, I mean, you'd probably expect Mount to get more minutes. Like, if anyone's guaranteed 90 each week, like he is for England almost, Mason Mount is for Chelsea, or certainly was last season. And we know Havertz can pick up a knock and then be out for a week. I mean, he's not on the sick note list yet, but he has picked up a fair few knocks, although he did have COVID last year and it took him a while to get back in. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Werner strikes a really good partnership with Lukaku, then that does mean you look at Mount, Ziyech and Havertz and think one of them will always have to miss out, unless, as I say, there could be a tweak in system. But again, maybe it's not Werner and Lukaku, maybe it's Havertz and Lukaku, or Mount and Lukaku. But I do think that he will always be paired with someone. By seeing what he did at Inter, playing with Lautaro Martinez, who did a lot of Lukaku's running and put a lot of great balls through to him, you can then ask Lukaku to be your out-and-out number 9, always on the last defender, keeping the centre-backs busy. That's what he wants to do, as you said earlier. He doesn't want to be Harry Kane, dropping deep, getting on the ball early. That's not his game. Yeah.
And I think this was my point that I was making on Twitter. It wasn't so much that I think Lukaku's a bad player, because I don't. I think he is exactly what Chelsea need. It's just when you see a fee of £100 million for a 28-year-old player who isn't... I don't know. He didn't have loads of suitors. He didn't have loads of people bidding for him. Inter obviously didn't want to sell him, which is why they paid so much money. But I don't know. I find it hard. I find it hard to put Lukaku in that same bracket as kind of like you keep mentioning him being a world-class striker, and I guess it's just hard for me to kind of get my head into that mindset with him. But the stats
United.
we've shown.
It's what he did at United as. You remember that? And honestly, if I look at that, I'd agree with you. Like, I would never be able to call Lukaku world-class striker if I'd watched loads of him 2 years ago at United, because I've followed his progress in Italy. And then you look at the Lukaku in the Euros was the Lukaku over the last couple of years in Serie A, and that's a world-class striker. But at United, it was completely wrong for him, wasn't it?
Yeah. And my next one, so not really about Lukaku, but it's kind of on the same theme. I mean, last transfer window, beginning of last season, Chelsea obviously spent a hell of a lot of money. You bought Chilwell in for big money, who's currently in my draft. I think his crosses are going to, having a massive target man up front like Lukaku is only going to benefit Reece James and Chilwell, you would have thought. Yeah. So I'm excited by that. But then you've got the likes of Ziyech, who I was really excited about, 35 million. You had Werner obviously coming in for big money, big reputation. What do you think is going to happen with those two? Because how are they? I mean, Ziyech, for example, he's had a good pre-season, right? But I still don't think he's first choice, and I don't really see where he plays in the system.
Yeah, it's a shame because he's done so well pre-season as, and I think he could start against Palace in game week 1 because of the time he's had on the training pitch. But will he be a guaranteed starter? He has to really pull some performances out. I mean, he had a friendly the other day against Tottenham. We drew 2-2. Ziyech got both the goals. He looked really good. He plays like Mahrez, slightly different system, but he's playing off the right, cutting in on his left foot. He can kick with both feet. We were so impressed with him at Ajax. And, we often see those that move to the Premier League. They do take a season to sort of bed in. I'd like to see him get more minutes, but again, like competition for places, because, we're speaking about Havertz, Mount, Werner, and Ziyech for 2 positions out of the 4 of them, if Lukaku joins. But we're not even talking about Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi in there as well. So if you put Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi in that conversation, there's 2 positions for 6 of them. And pre-season, we've seen both Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi actually play at wing-back and get some minutes at wing-back. Now, they're not going to play instead of Chilwell and James in terms of first choice, I don't think. But Tuchel's looking at it and going, I need backups on some of those positions, because let's talk, say Alonso will go. There's no out-and-out right wing-back reserve for Reece James now, because Azpilicueta plays right centre-back mostly. And you look at it and go, where are they all going to play? So the likes of Ziyech and possibly the likes of Pulisic, you think, maybe they're going to get fewer minutes this season. But it does keep competition high and means performances have got to be up there. And we do forget, like Chelsea, the Chelseas, the Cities, the Liverpools of this world, they do play so many more games than the other teams because they all go so much further in the cups. So before we know it, they're playing twice a week, and then you get a bit of rotation and players are always fresh.
It's what I always struggle with teams like Chelsea, and I normally pick on Chelsea as my kind of the team that I dislike the most. But it is for reasons like Ziyech, for example, was a player that I watched a fair bit playing for Ajax, and I just thought this guy will come to the Premier League and he will shine. Like he's so creative, such a talented technical player, and he's just not going to get the minutes that I think his talent kind of deserves, and he'll probably end up going somewhere else. It's the same with Salah. When he signed, I don't think he ever really got the chance to do it. I mean, it just seems to have happened quite a lot with Chelsea, where you sign these players for big money and then they kind of get shunned out kind of relatively quickly. I mean, Hudson-Odoi is a really interesting one, because every season it's like Chelsea reject £50 million from Bayern Munich for Hudson-Odoi. Chelsea reject this, and no one seems to like him. Lampard barely played him. Tuchel's been using him as like a backup right wing back for James. He just doesn't seem to have the trust of any managers at all. But yeah, he's still there.
Key word there, as trust. No one doubts his talent. 2-3 years ago, he was in the same, probably 3 years ago, he was in the same sort of England setups as Sancho. Jadon Sancho and Hudson-Odoi are best mates. So let's say England under 17s, 18s off the top of my head. They were seen as the 2 stars for the future for England, right? And it was Hudson-Odoi that was seen as number 1 and Sancho as number 2. And it's crazy. You look at the where Sancho has gone from that. He's gone to, I think from there, he was at Man City at the time, and then he had his time at Dortmund. And you look at Hudson-Odoi, all that talent, potentially more than Sancho, and they're just levels apart. One of them looks like, every bit this sort of 70, 80 million pound player. And Hudson-Odoi, whilst clubs have still bid big money, like Bayern Munich at 50, there's just trust issues there. He doesn't seem to have it.
I wonder if Hudson-Odoi had gone to Bayern Munich, whether his story could be different. I think it's Chelsea are definitely a club where you have a limited chance to really, prove yourself. And if you don't in that time, then you're gone. I mean, Lukaku is a perfect example. I mean, Lukaku was sold to Everton. He was never really given that bigger shot to do it. De Bruyne, another example. I mean, the list goes on.
Salah.
Salah's the biggest one for me. I mean. My story is I went to see Salah in a Europa League game. He was playing against Spurs. I was at university, and the guy wanted to go see a Spurs game. He was French, and we saw Salah, and he just absolutely tore Spurs apart. And I wish I'd just gone and put a bet on him to smash the Premier League. And then he joined Chelsea, and I was really excited. He was terrible, and then he eventually came and smashed it. But sometimes you see, and I like I said, I had that feeling with Ziyech, but I don't think I just don't think it's going to happen at Chelsea with him. Not with the system that Tuchel plays.
Yeah, it's a real shame. And he has been, in the Italian press, he was actually linked with a move to AC Milan a couple of weeks ago. I don't think that will happen now because he's had a good pre-season. I think Tuchel will want him in the squad, but I am concerned about the minutes he gets. And you think maybe one of those players has to move. Could Hudson-Odoi even leave this window? Who knows? But I feel like our squad doesn't need 6 of those players for 2 positions, when they're all on high wages. Not that that's a concern for us, and it pains me to say that. I don't like my club being like that. But yeah, it's a little bit messy if we're going to continue with this system, because when you have a back 3 or back 5, as we do, effectively you are taking out one of those attacking number 10 slots or wide forward slots for a centre-back. That's what it is. We're playing with 3 centre-backs instead of 2, which means we lose one of those creative midfielders, which I love the system we play. It's worked. It's won us the Champions League. It suits It suits us in so many ways. But you look at the likes of Ziyech or Pulisic and think, we didn't play that system, that guy would get loads more minutes. So it's a shame.
It's why I like the defence, right? It's why I've got Chilwell in my FPL team. I think the fixtures are tough, but I still think Chelsea will grind out some clean sheets. I think Tuchel is a defensive first manager, and I think that's not to say that he stifles attacking talent. I think he does well with the likes of Havertz and gets stuff out of Werner. And I think Pulisic is a better player than Werner, and I think it's going to be it was a disappointing year for both Werner and Pulisic last season. I wonder how that's going to turn around this year. But I just think Chilwell and James, I just think their stock is boosted so much FPL wise with Lukaku coming in, because even if Lukaku is in the first sort of 6 games not getting that many goals because they're prioritising defence, the balls that Chilwell and James are going to put in for him, they only need 1 assist, a clean sheet, 3 bonus. You're looking at 12, 13 points. It could be absolute gold. So I guess, Gianni, my final question to you, I guess we've kind of already touched on it, but how essential is Romelu Lukaku? What would your answer be to that question?
I think when the fixtures turn in 7, I think he will become essential. If Kane is at City at the same time, however, then there'll be an argument to say that it's one or the other. But I do think we'll see loads jumping on both and completely changing the setup of the team. I think because of the exciting transfers we're going to see in the next couple of weeks, I think there's going to be more wild cards than ever in game week 3-4. The only last thing to touch on that I know we haven't mentioned, because I saw a few questions in the chat, is pens at Chelsea.
Okay, yep.
Lukaku will be on pens, I believe. I know Jorginho.
Really?
I know Jorginho's got a big role and sort of does take pens. What Jorginho doesn't have is a massive ego and a massive need to hit certain goal scoring stats. And I think because of that, he'll be very okay with Lukaku coming in taking them. Lukaku's record is 30 and 35, very similar to Jorginho's. Lukaku also hasn't missed in Serie A. He hasn't missed since 2017-18 a pen, which was for United. Schmeichel saved it against Leicester. He scored 11 penalties out of 11 last season. That includes a couple for Belgium, and including one against Donnarumma. We know how difficult scoring pens against Donnarumma is. So I think
don't bring that up.
Sorry. I think we will see Lukaku on pens.
Do you know who missed the most penalties in the Premier League last season?
Jorginho, right?
Correct.
Yeah, probably 2 or 3. Yeah. He scored. Last season was his worst season on record for pens, and again we saw him missing in final the Euros. Before that, he was verging on 100% record for Chelsea till last season, I think. I think we'll see Lukaku take them. And when they got taken off Jorginho for a while under Frank, I think he put game to Werner temporarily. Jorginho was cool with it and was very outspoken about being cool with it. Like, that's not his role in the team. There's no massive ego there, which I love. Taking penalties off a striker or a goal scorer seems always a lot more difficult than taking it off your DM.
Yeah, especially because he's probably got fat goal bonuses in his contract as well, which probably sweeten the deal. Really, really interesting, all of that. I think for me, it just makes me want to keep my wild card until 7 even more. Because I think if you're using it in game week 3 or 4, you're going to find it difficult, I think, to really tap into this Chelsea run. And this Chelsea run is good, really, really good. So, as much as I talk about disliking Chelsea, I think it's going to be wildcard time in around game week 7 to try and get in as many Chelsea players as I can. And then it's United, I think, game week 15 or something. They go on an absolutely outrageous run as well of like 8 or 9 fixtures. It's going to be a really interesting season. We've got lots of new signings. We've got big fixture shifts at different times. Yeah, really looking forward to it. And we get going on Friday. Yeah, it's going to be great. Friday will definitely be, a very exciting day for many, I think. Yeah, and looking forward to Fest as well. Gianni, thank you so much for joining me. I will speak to you soon and catch up with you soon. And thanks everyone for watching, and see you later. Thanks, mate.